Hey everyone! Welcome back to another day, another made-for-TV drama. Today's episode I'm going to be discussing Justice for Annie, a Moment of Truth movie starring Danica McKellar and Peggy Lipton. Remember those Moment of Truth movies that came out in the 90s? Well, this is one of them. I guess that just means that they're based on true stories. I'm not sure, but then again, most of these movies on Lifetime back then were based on true stories anyway, so I'm not sure what that was about. This one is about a young woman named Annie, if you hadn't already figured that out from the title. From what I've read, her name was Deana or Deana. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, but it was one of those, Deana or Deana, in real life. The movie opens with a spoiler. Annie goes to the mountains with a man and a woman, goes up to the edge of a cliff to take some pictures, and is then pushed to her death by the man. The mother gets a knock on the door and has to hear the tragic news that her daughter has died in an accident. And then the movie goes back in time about 6 months, I believe. Annie has just graduated from high school, and her mother wishes she could be more responsible. In real life, I heard the victim had a low IQ, so it's possible that's what the movie is trying to convey, though everyone just seems to gang up on poor Annie and make her feel like she's useless, starting with her mother, and then soon after, Annie's new husband takes on that role. Yes, Annie gets married to a military man right out of high school, and surprise, surprise, the marriage goes down in flames. In all fairness, people used to get married all the time out of high school back in the old days. This movie is based on a case that happened in the 80s, though, and perhaps wasn't as common for them to do so. But probably more common than it is today. Not yet divorced, but about to be, Annie goes out to have some fun one night and meets a new man who shows an interest in her. He invites her to meet his parents. They love bomb her into moving into their spare room, and next thing you know, she and this family are tied at the hip, and her real mother is being cut out of the equation by the fishy couple who's taken over Annie's life in a short amount of time. You already know what's going to happen to Annie because of the opening scene. I will just say that when Annie is killed, her mother begins to suspect that it wasn't just an accident. She learns the couple took out a $100,000, which it was $35,000 in real life, but in the movie it's about a $100,000 insurance policy on her daughter a week before her accident. In real life, I think it was only a day before. The case goes to trial, and I won't say any more. You will have to watch the movie to find out the chain of events that led to the trial and to the ultimate verdict. I've seen this movie a few times before, but I rewatched it with my parents a couple of nights ago. They're not huge Lifetime TV movie fans, but I knew my dad would be intrigued by the premise. Couple takes out insurance policy on an 18-year-old right before killing her. My dad is a former lawyer. It just seemed like the kind of case that would intrigue him. And sure enough, he was really invested in the outcome. He kept saying, I just want to know what made them suspect this couple. He didn't think taking out a life insurance policy on Annie was enough evidence to convict. He was on the edge of his seat the whole way through. My mom and dad kept saying about the couple, what complete monsters. They were depicted as being truly evil, as I'm sure the people were in real life. After watching the movie, we watched an episode of Forensic Files called The Financial Downfall, which was about the same case. From doing some research online, I found out that the husband who helped kill the real girl ended up dying before going to trial. But my parents and I agreed his wife looked like the devil just from the photos we saw online. Some important takeaways from this movie. It's probably best not to rush into marriage right after high school. I know people did it all the time in the old days, but we live longer now, and women have opportunities these days that they didn't always have. And society has just changed so much. Expectations of women have changed. People's attention spans seem to have shortened. Annie's marriage ended up being a failure, which wasn't really a surprise, but in all fairness, I don't think that was why she ended up in the situation she did. I think even if she hadn't had that failed marriage, she would have still ended up being taken advantage of by this conniving couple because she was a young, vulnerable woman looking for her place in life, like so many women are. And if she had a low IQ, she would have been an easier target than others, which makes what this couple did even worse, though it was already pretty bad what they did. The most important takeaway from this movie for me, though, was to be suspicious of anyone who just flatters you without even knowing you. Like, it's something abusive men do when looking for a new partner. And it was something this couple did to Annie, making her feel special when everyone else made her feel like Amelia freaking Bedelia. And if you don't know who Amelia Bedelia is, you really need to educate yourself, because those were only some of the best children's books ever. My dad, while watching this, was really impressed with the way the movie showed how sneaky and conniving this couple was. He was like, that's probably just how it happens in real life, which it was, because it was based on a true story. But it shows how they love-bombed Annie. They were always planning to take out the insurance on her, but they slipped it into conversation casually so that she wouldn't be suspicious. The way they put it was that they already had an appointment for themselves, but she should really consider taking out insurance for herself because you're never too young. Everything they said and did was so sly. Some movies that are kind of like Justice for Annie include the following. First of all, The People Next Door. That was also about a sinister couple who has ulterior motives with another woman's daughter, or daughters, in the case of this movie. In The People Next Door, a woman, played by Nicolette Sheraton, entrusts her children to the care of her neighbors when she needs a sitter. The couple eventually kidnap two of the girls, change their identities, and tell them lies about their mother and their sister that they left behind. It's also kind of reminiscent of I Know My First Name is Steven. That was another movie and true story where a kid is brainwashed and given a new identity by a kidnapper. But The People Next Door also reminded me of Justice for Annie, because what that couple did, was kind of similar in the, as they kind of wormed their way into this family's life. Also, that couple had a child from the past who died, just like the couple in Justice for Annie did. Justice for Annie isn't really similar to Fall into Darkness, which was a little revenge tale gone wrong based on the horror novel of the same name by Christopher Pike. But that movie also involves someone falling off a cliff. And there was also a movie about a woman falling off a cliff and her sister developing a fear of heights as a result, called Don't Look Down. That was a Wes Craven film. One thing I've learned from these movies is that lots of people fall off cliffs in them. But those are just a couple that you might remember. Danica McKellar stars as Annie. She's been in other Lifetime movies such as Cradle of Conspiracy, about the young runaway girl impregnated by a guy who plans to sell her baby. You most likely know her as Winnie Cooper from The Wonder Years. Peggy Lipton plays the mother. She was in the Mod Squad. She kind of reminds me of Sybil Shepherd. And Lachlan Monroe plays the son of the evil couple. He's played a lot of bad guys in these movies, usually teenagers up to no good. He was one of the kidnappers in the movie Abduction of Innocence, for example. Anytime some teen boy is doing something bad, it's probably played by Lachlan Monroe. Or Ivan Sergei, who is also in a movie with Lachlan Monroe called Mother May I Sleep with Danger. Ivan Sergei was the lead in that alongside Tori Spelling. I give this movie a 4 out of 5, Justice for Annie. I know I've talked about a few other movies, but getting back to Justice for Annie, I give this movie a 4 out of 5 because it does feel a little bit by the numbers, but it's a really fascinating story based on a true crime, and I really recommend that you check it out. Well, that's all for now. Take care.